In this video, we're going to be talking about downshifting, specifically how we can perform smooth and clean downshifts without throttle blipping and the exact process to achieving that. Stay tuned. When downshifting, it's very common that riders will blip the throttle in order to rev match. To explain, blipping the throttle with each downshift momentarily raises the revs so that when the lower gear is engaged, you don't get any unwanted reactions like the rear wheel slowing down and sliding, or the bike jolting as the engine and transmission attempt to sync up again. However, it's still possible to perform smooth and tidy downshifts without the throttle blip. To do this, we're going to be using something I call the slipping technique. It's a technique I was taught early on and the technique I still use today, which I've used both with and without slipper clutches. Like I said, the slipping technique does away with the throttle blip altogether. Instead, the rider pulls the clutch in, downshifts, and then smoothly and quickly engages the next lower gear. The trick to getting this right is to get the downshift done as quickly as possible so you don't let the engine speed drop off too much. The procedure goes like this. I pull the clutch in just enough to disengage the engine and gearbox. I press on the gear lever to go down a gear. Then I get back to the bite point as quick as I can, after which I quickly but smoothly let the clutch lever out. The whole thing is completed in about half a second and only lets the engine revs drop about 2000 RPM at most. The fairly small drop in RPM coupled with my smooth re-engagement of the engine and gearbox means I rarely suffer from any adverse effects. In order to ensure this technique remains smooth, there are a couple of things to avoid. The first is to not immediately dump the clutch out. The releasing of the clutch lever with this technique is quick, but it is not instant. The goal is to get back to the biting point, that's the point where the engine and transmission begin to engage. You get to that point as quick as you can, but the full engagement of the engine and transmission should be smooth and controlled. The second thing to avoid is rushing. Trying to nail this in lightning quick speed on the first few attempts is just going to have you missing gears, wagging the bike's tail around and hitting false neutrals. Just like with blipping, it will take some practice, but after a while you'll be doing it with ease. The last thing I wanted to touch on is the notion that this is bad for the bike, mainly because it's the objection I sometimes hear when talking about this, and in some cases people get pretty angry about it. Now, the first thing I'll say here is that I do think it's objectively worse for the bike. The clutch will slip a little more than it would with a correctly timed blip, so that in itself means more friction and more wear. However, when done correctly, I don't believe it to be significantly detrimental to the bike. And I should say that this isn't an engineering opinion, simply one born from thousands of miles ridden on the track with this technique, both with and without slipper clutches and on older and newer machinery, all without any perceptible degradation in performance. Not to mention that with the advent of slipper clutches, and more recently electronic assisted auto blipping, the manual throttle blip is becoming less and less necessary for the majority of track riders. For those reasons, I feel happy in my recommendation to use the slipping technique should you choose to go that route. So what do you think about downshifting? What techniques do you use and why? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you like this video, be sure to hit the like button and share it with others, and I'll see you in the next one.